Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video. Today I've got a fixed blade for you. It seems like it's been a while since I did a fixed blade video, but this I think is a very good one. This is the Schrade Schf 55. It's a Brian Griffin design, and they have a number of, Schrade has a number of Brian Griffin designs. Comes with this sheath that it clips into very nicely. You can see that I'll talk a little bit more about the way this knife carries when we get into that, but I have it set up for horizontal carry. Anyway, by way of introduction, just let me say that I've been overall quite impressed with Schrade's fixed blades. Their folders I don't get as excited about, but the fixed blades, they tend to do a pretty good job of making a functional tool that's tough as nails and readily available to most people. You know, the budget on these is fairly comfortable for pretty much anyone who really wants one or needs one. So that's my general take, and this one I really wanted to check out because it looked like it has been a really good option for an EDC fixed blade. Okay, so I'll come back to some of the things that make it good for that when we get into the close-up version or the closer-up view, but let me say this to get started. Let me share size and weight with you to get started. We normally do that. So overall, this is 7 3/4 inches in length. The blade is 3.5 inches. The handle is 4 inches, just a little over 4 inches. The weight on this is 6 ounces, or just under, like 5.7 ounces. And when you add the sheath, you're getting up around 7.5 ounces. So a little heavy, especially compared to, you know, a pocket knife that we normally carry that would be 5 ounces or something. However, because of the sheath and because it fits comfortably on a belt, that does, I think, offset that weight a little bit. Okay, and we talked about that. If you want a whole discussion, check out the fixed blades for EDC video. They are usually a little heavier and a little more demanding in terms of carry, but there are some trade-offs that you get for that. Okay, let's see, did I forget anything in terms of, I gave you the blade and handle size. Oh yeah, it is, here's one dimension I meant to mention. It is 3/4 of an inch thick in the handle, which actually is not something you see a lot, but it does make it very, very comfortable and very hand-filling. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch over to the top-down view and we'll get into some of the details. Okay, so here we are zoomed in a little further on this knife, the Schf 55. I'll take the sheath out of the picture there for now until we want it. You can see here now that the blade is full flat ground. It is fairly thick. Notice how much sharpened edge here is exposed, or secondary bevel. And when you see that, you've got a pretty good indication that you're dealing with a pretty thick blade stock. This would be a knife that I would not hesitate to stick into something and pry with. You're not gonna, very, very unlikely you're gonna have any issues. Look how thick that blade stock is. Well over, you know, you're looking at definitely 3/16 or even a little bit more than that there. So this blade is 1095 high carbon steel. It is coated. You can see there's already some wear and tear on that coating. And it is held up fairly well, although it's coating. So it will wear off over time. That's pretty much guaranteed, okay? Now, the only drawback I would say to, well, the main drawback I would say to this blade is the sheer thickness of it. The same thing that makes it very tough also makes it a little awkward to cut with. This is a knife that, because it's quite thick, you know, you've got a lot of material that you're pushing into, you know, if you're carving a piece of wood, if you're cutting an apple, if you're, you know, whatever it is you're doing with your knife, you're moving a lot of material through that. Now, having said that, you could probably baton with this and be okay, although if you're thinking of it as an EDC fixed blade, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of batoning. So that is a bit of a drawback. The knife is quite thick. And there are two things that means. Number one, that means if it gets dull, you're going to notice it more. At least in my experience, you know, I'm going to try to make a V shape here. So the bigger this angle, right, the more you're going to notice. If it gets dull, think about if this gets dull, it's still fairly thin. You're going to push it through material. But if it gets out to here, and this is a fairly wide angle on this secondary bevel, as that gets dull, right, now you're dealing with just a flattened wedge and it's going to be really hard to cut with. So I found if you keep this sharp, it works pretty well. But if it starts to get dull, you kind of notice it right away. Not that that's an issue. It's 1095. It's pretty easy to maintain. But you're going to want to, if this is going to be like your EDC knife, it's going to take a little bit of effort. Probably, you know, at the end of every day, if you give it a quick strop or touch it up on a hone, you'll probably be fine. Just kind of putting that out there as sort of fair warning. It is tough steel and it does hold an edge reasonably well. That's why so many fixed blades are made in 1095. It's a very good steel. Moving on to the handle here, you can see that it's a Grivery handle. Okay, very, very thick, and you've got that nice finger choil at the front there. I will say this, you know, whatever else you want to say about this knife, it is extremely comfortable in hand, and the jimping is very functional. So when you grab this knife, it is very confidence inspiring, okay? You definitely feel like you've really got a hold of it. Even though it's a fairly small handle at only 4 inches, it does work really, really well. You know, you get a lot of comfort there. And I'll bring in a comparison here in a second, and eventually I'll do a full comparison between these two. But by the way, we're talking about the handle. There is a lanyard hole and an exposed tang there, so that if you wanted to, although it's a little short, now you'd have to be careful, okay, but watch, there's the bottom of my hand. I can hit that surface. I'm sorry, I'm shaking the camera a little bit doing that, but I can get the handle exposed at the bottom of my hand and do some, you know, if you wanted to break some stone for, you know, making flint, or if you wanted to crack open nuts or whatever, you could use that as a you know, crushing tool. So let me pull in the sheath now. We've talked about the handle and it's fairly comfortable, not super duper grippy, but with the deep choil and the good jimping there on the back of the blade, that's where you're kind of getting your grip from, okay? So let's bring in the sheath and talk about this for a second. I do like the sheath. The retention is very positive. You got a nice big thumb ramp there, so you can get it out of that sheath really easily, even though I guess you can pull it out, but you see how you don't have much control. So you're going to want to, like, that's a big benefit. And so the retention in the sheath is very good. Now I have this set up for horizontal carry, and here's my I have 2 main complaints about this sheath, okay? Number 1 is this. Look at this little piece that they've used to connect the sheath and the belt loop. It's really big, okay? Now, the problem that creates is, you know, if you put this on your belt, your knife is a good 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch away from your body. All right, so that does 2 things. Number 1, it makes it want to move around a little bit this direction, because you've got, like, think about if this is your pant leg, right? See how much space you have between your body and the knife? It's quite a bit, which allows for a lot of movement when you're walking. And if you, and I've configured this purposely to reduce this space as much as I could, okay? Now the other thing that I have as a complaint is it is a closed loop. And you guys know how I feel about that. I prefer a loop like this found on the SE3, and I'll bring this in now anyway. I actually feel like the sheath, in terms of attention to detail and how well this fits on it, is actually a little better than the SE sheath. However, the clip is what makes all the difference. The clip on this is perfect. It just works so well. You can clip it onto, you know, the top of a pocket, you can clip it onto your waistband, or you can clip it onto a belt. It just works everywhere all the time, and that is really, really awesome. Something like this, as you know, if you want to put this knife on or off, let's say you're getting in and out of a car and driving, well, because you've got such a thick offset here, you really notice this in your lower back. Plus now you've got this sheath, that means you've got to take your belt off every time in order to get the knife off. So I much prefer something that clips, and I've talked about that before. Let's, since we've got this here, do a little very brief comparison with the SE. They're very, very close in size. Okay, the Schrade is just a teeny tiny bit heavier. The handle is a little bit, it's just different, okay? The finger choil on the Schrade is here. It's still very close to the cutting edge. See how you get your finger right up there, so you're gonna get good control. With the SE, they've done a similar thing but achieved it a different way. They've just given you a finger choil so you can choke up, okay? So let's flip these back over. Very brief comparison. You can see how these work for size, and I will do a full comparison review or comparison video on these two knives together. So overall, guys, this is a really great little knife. I have been quite happy with it. I've abused it a bit, and that's one of the things that I like about Schrade. You don't have to feel bad about really putting it through its paces. Number one, they're always very tough. This is obviously very thick. Maybe that's worth bringing the SE back in so you can see a comparison. Notice the difference in blade stock there. It's very different, right? You've got a lot more material here on the Schrade. Sorry about that drop. And that is worth noticing. I just wish that they had ground it a little bit thinner here at the edge. All right, so there you go, guys. That's my take on the Schrade SCHF 55. Really nice little fixed blade. Very comfortable for EDC, and even more comfortable, I will say, if you were just going to use this for hiking or backpacking or something like that, then I have absolutely no complaints about the Sheath, because you're used to carrying a little bit more in that scenario. And in that sort of philosophy of use, or in that role, this Sheath is excellent, and all of my complaints really kind of go away. All right, so there you go, guys. Great little knife, very budget friendly, highly recommended. We'll talk to you later.